Well, I'm Rob Allen, owner of the RangeMaster Shoulder Therapy Company. We concentrate on bone and joint range of motion in the shoulder and other places. And today with us, we have Winifred Jolly. And Winifred is one of our customers that wound up with one of our stretching straps. And if I understand correctly, it wasn't for your shoulder at all. It was for another situation.
Yes.
Or I beg your pardon?
Originally, it was not for the shoulder.
Right, yeah. So Winifred, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'll ask the question I'm never supposed to ask, but could you share your age with us?
Yes, I'm 83 years old.
I detected that from the earlier notes that you were, and then tell us where you reside.
And I live in Atlanta, Georgia. That's why I'm living with my daughter just in the last few years because of major health issues. I've had like 13 surgeries for lots of different things. And I was widowed, and my husband died mountain biking. And after a while, it was time for me to not be on my own. I really live on my own here, but it's wonderful. That's why I'm in Atlanta.
I'm curious, there's just a little bit of an accent there, and it doesn't sound like it's from Atlanta.
No, I'm from Scotland.
Ah, you're from Scotland.
And
how long have you lived in the US?
About 55 years, because my children were born in Scotland, and they're in their 50s. But probably I've been here about 50 years. And my husband and I lived in Boston. Well, actually, we lived in Europe when we met, and then, but then we had to move, and we moved to Long Island, where my husband's career, which was designing something that had to go onto the moon, that was in 1964. So that's the year that about the time I came here. And so most of the time I've been on Long Island.
Ah, and then you moved down to be near your daughter as you started to go through some health issues, it sounds like. So tell me how you originally came about the stretch strap. It sounds like it was something other than shoulder. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm not quite sure when I bought it, but I think I bought it after the COVID lockdown, I go to a lot of physical therapy. I have done over the years. But I never went until I broke a lot of bones, and, I kept having accidents. I take risks, put it that way, and have a few accidents. And so last year I was with this wonderful physical therapist, and it's a group, and I'll tell you who they are if you want to know. But when the lockdown came, and that was about a year or so ago, I just created a gymnasium here. You can't see it here, but I have a whole lot of equipment and stationary bicycle and reclining bicycle and weights. But most of my life, I do a lot of things to do with stretching. And I only found you I just went into Google, and I just saw the name, and it said shoulder range of motion. But Laura, who was my therapist, she had me use that one day, and I was trying to think back what reason I was in the physical therapy at that time, because I go in for lots of different reasons. Some doctor tells me, it's okay, okay, you can go in. And I like physical therapy, and I like it when it's a group. There was a very intelligent group of young therapists together. It was just great. And she gave me that one day, and I was lying on, you lie on a table, and it must have been, I don't think I had bursitis at that time, although recently I did, but it was on my right hip and upper leg. And she had me put that in my leg and put my foot in one of the loops and lie on this bed and pull my leg up. And I kept doing that 60 times, And then I think I changed to the other side and did it with the other leg. but it was this side that was hurting me. But that's when I saw the thing. And when I looked up on Google, I said, oh, that's the thing that Laura has. And that's why I bought it.
Oh, okay. So you were using it for lower extremity stretching, and you had some hip related pain. And that's a pretty rigorous protocol that you're going through. Did the therapist give that to you, or did you decide you were going to do it that many times?
Well, they used to have me do things 3 times 30, some toe raising things, and on different machines.
Yes.
So when I got home, when I was at home here, and I certainly didn't, I was very strict until I got vaccinated, about going out. I went into another company. It wasn't your company, I don't think. And I bought these kind of latex looking bands and things, just anything I had used with Laura. But I have a whole file of photographs in physical therapy from previous years. I say previous years because 34 years ago, I fell 100 feet down a mountain and I lost my leg and I fractured my skull. And so I've really been in physical therapy most of that time since then. I was training to go to the Himalayan mountains, and it took me 2 years after I came out the coma to train. And I did a lot of it in gymnasiums, So I just made this thing in my house, and I do it every other day. And I try to rest, because I've learned that resting is just as important as doing the things the older I get. And so that's why that just became part of my kit for moving things. And so I use it now. I use it currently on both legs. Now, one of my legs, the amputee one, has just found out I had, it's called venous insufficiency. It's where the veins, I don't have varicose veins. My legs kept getting bigger. And I saw it on the gym, there's mirrors in the gymnasium. I saw this person, I didn't even know it was me. This was like 2 years ago. And I said, I can't believe, and I've lost 10 pounds, which I did because of a lot of abdominal surgery. I was vomiting all the time. And so I figured out myself, and the doctors were all very pleased because I keep going into the hospital. I haven't been in a year. And so I just started to change the way I ate, just much, much smaller portions and a very strict diet. And I love it. And so I lost a lot of weight, except for my legs, and my legs just got bigger. And so that it's to do with the veins are all not circulating. So I use that thing, and I have my leg away up. I do a lot of things lying on the floor on a mat. I don't do things standing up. I mean, I do, but I do a lot on the floor. I do about 40 minutes on the floor with different leg exercises and shoulder exercise. And I also, I lift weights and things like that.
Yeah. Now, tell me, gosh, there's a lot there to unpack. When did you have a fall?
Well, about 34 years ago. My husband and I, we loved hiking. I mean, we met one day 60 years ago, and we just met actually at a festival concert of classical music and Shakespeare plays and stuff. And we just met, we bumped into each other, and that night we decided to get married. And I lived with him ever since. And he died about 20 years ago, mountain biking, which was
tragic,
a freak accident. It was just awful. But he saved my life. So then we just climbed up lots of, he was a mountain climber, but we didn't really like mountain climbing where you put
pitons in.
Yes. We're sort of into saving as much of nature as you can, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even though biking really can destroy the soil, you have to be careful where you put your bicycle if you want to respect the soil and the terrain. But anyway, we were training to go. We both had childhood dreams. I mean, he's American, and just happened that we both had always wanted to go to the Himalayas. And so we were training to go. And so one summer we went to, well, it was on the Sierra Mountains. It wasn't Yosemite, it was south of Yosemite on it was called Kings Canyon Wilderness, but we went hiking. We used to go with the Sierra Club and things like that. And that was where it was a year of a drought, 1988. And this was our resting day where we didn't all go hiking unless we felt like it. It's called peak bagging. You just take your lunch with you. And we just went up an unnamed mountain, and there was not really any trail. And we all did it, we being the Sierra group. And my husband and I would probably be the oldest. I was 50, I know that's when I lost my leg. And he was a few years older, and the others were younger, but they're all lovely people. And so on that trip, on the way back down from the mountain, this young woman and I, we were sort of first of the group, so to start down the mountain. And there was this huge boulder. When you get above, this was like 14,000 feet. And so we were way above the tree line. And so big rocks, like all dislodged, and the group walking down, and it wasn't a trail. And so we actually dislodged, all of us really dislodged the rock, which hit me in the head. And that's how I fell 100 feet.
Oh my goodness. And was your companion person hit as well? The woman you were?
No, I never saw her again. Actually, not true. When I came out of my husband rescued me and held me down in the mountain for 27 hours, along with another young man who happened to be a doctor. He was on a vacation too. He stayed with my husband, who's called Scott, and the rest of the group went out in all directions. This was before the Sierra Club, you don't take cell phones with you. Maybe they changed, but we didn't in these days, but we didn't really have cell phones. We didn't anyway. Anyway, they all went out to find, and it took 27 hours for them to find us.
Gosh.
So then the US Air Force, that was a place, St. Andrews Air Force Base. I was in a coma, by the way. And so for 27 hours, I don't know anything, but my husband told me after how I spoke in a foreign language and all things like that. He told me about what happened because he held me down. And but it was so steep that they had to send these cages down. I always call them the lion cages that you see on public television. Mm-hmm. And I got into one, he said, and then I don't know, some other organization sent another one for him to come. And then they flew us to Fresno, which was where the biggest tertiary care hospital, I think that's about 18 miles. And so I know nothing about that. I just know from photographs that people took and the things that were on the newspaper, which people saved. And then when I came out of a coma, which was a week later, they had already worked on the skull fracture, which was really the bigger issue than the leg. But the leg was just a total mess. They couldn't save anything. Anyway, that's what happened.
And where's the amputation? Is it below the knee, above the knee?
Below the knee, thank goodness. Yes, below the knee is my left leg. And actually, they wanted to amputate, and my husband said, well, I really think we should wait till my wife gets out of the coma and she can decide that too. And they said, well, we don't even know if she'll come out of the coma, but they honored that. But he called our children. Our daughter was at Harvard and our son was on Long Island, and they flew out. And so they were there because when I came out of a coma, my children one was holding one hand and one was holding the other. They did that in shifts to give their dad a break, and then they left and my husband came in. But I just know that's when I came out of the coma.
Bless their hearts. Well, what have you done to stay active over the last 30 years as an amputee?
Well, I'd say that from the day I had the amputation, which was really another month or two later, I had it back on Long Island, and they put a cast in until it heals. From that day, they said I could walk on a walker, and my son used to come every day for an hour. I had to have an adult with me on the hospital going on. And from then on, I never stopped exercising every day. Now I just exercise every other day because I really think I appreciate the meaning of resting between, workouts. But we also did a lot of cross-country skiing and mountain biking, but mostly but since I lost my leg, it took me, we were going to go to the Himalayas the next year, but after I was recovering and I was at physical therapy for about a year. The insurance paid for the whole year, and it was a wonderful guy, a well-known guy who's a ultra marathon runner, and he was wonderful. And my husband and I would go at 3 o'clock, and then my husband would come from his office at 5, and someone drove me there, and then my husband would join us so that we could work out together. I mean, with the physical therapist. And as we trained really to go to the Himalayas, but the next year we couldn't because I got cancer and I just couldn't go anywhere. I had to spend that summer recovering, but I went back to my business within 5 weeks. And so, I just juggled everything.
Yeah.
But when we would go to that gym, we both had wonderful, we're into Patagonia company, and we both had these big backpacks, and we brought them full of sleeping bags and things that we normally hiked with. And we'd go on the same treadmill with the same packs so that we could pace together, so that I could learn to pace myself with him. He was a wonderful partner to have. He saved my life several times. And since he died, my children have saved my life doing a few other things, mostly mountain biking.
Wonderful. How are you using the stretch strap these days? You said you're using it for the hip pain most recently.
Well, that was a year ago. And recently too, but that's when I first used it. But mostly I use it, yes, it's just, I do a lot of leg stretching and hip stretching things in my exercises, and I get them all from previous therapists or going into Google. And I do a lot of things where they're up to the ceiling, my legs. And then I do a lot of things where you stretch them out this way and you stretch them this way. And I usually do 3 reps of 30 or sometimes just 3 reps of 10, depending on what the exercise is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not official. I just do it from experience. But I've got into a rhythm, and I get bothered if I don't do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I have to go to the hospital or whatever. And so when I was in that accident, I mean, the skull was the biggest thing, and I had titanium put in my head and all this, and then the leg. But this arm got paralyzed, and they brought in physiatrists and all kinds of people. I couldn't use it, but my surgeons just told me to take a towel and stretch like this behind your back.
Yeah.
He was kind of an active person himself. This was a guy who did the amputation. And I did that every day when I came out of a shower. I just can't remember because my house had a shower. Since then I shower all the time, but I must have stood there on just one leg. Yes. I can't hop on my good leg anymore. It's so overused. I used to hop. And so that kind of stretching thing is really the same issue. And he just told me how to use a towel. And I still have to. So that's for about, at least 10 or 15 years. And now it's totally well.
So you're moving. And by virtue of moving, it's back. It's recovered all of its neurological function.
Whatever it was, and I don't know what a frozen shoulder means. I can just guess, but nobody seemed to be losing sleep over it. But I didn't want to feel one arm was weaker than the other,
Yes. Well, that is tremendous. Winifred, not everybody gets back up after the kind of fall that you've taken. I'll bet you got a little advice for people on what to do, because that could have been the end of your active lifestyle, but it wasn't.
Well, I've been interviewed quite a few times at different places. But and I don't usually give advice to people, but if somebody was asking me like you're asking, I mean, I don't say to someone else, so you ought to do this way, or, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't believe in that.
But reflecting on your own experience, what do you think got you back?
Well, my children, who are just wonderfully supportive, they give me so much independence. It's what I want, but they're there all the time if I need them, and they're both very tremendously supportive. And they just say that what they tell me is, Mom, they say, you never quit. That's just what you're like. Now, I was very healthy. I didn't even have doctors to have my babies. I never had been to doctors till all this happened. But now I view myself as a professional patient because I have a lot of things since I broke my wrist bicycling, I broke my other leg bicycling, you know, and I have to deal with things. But I would say that when they say things that to me, I thought about it, and I realize I'm sort of project oriented, and it's not like I'm super organized, but I did run a business and I had a few staff people. So I do know how to organize things, but I'm not like a business person. I'm not super business-like, but I look back on my life a few times because one year I spent about 6 months in the hospital, not to do with my leg, but to do with my kidneys. They discovered a kidney illness, which is very serious, and so I'm never once bored in the hospital, not once, because everything is interesting. I mean, I love being outdoors, but sometimes, since I don't really like living in Atlanta because I don't like hot weather. I mean, I grew up in Scotland and we didn't get this kind of sunshine. And so you just make it interesting. But I realized that after they took the amputation and they put this cast on her leg, besides my son coming, because he worked near that hospital and he would walk me up and down a couple of times and then he'd leave. But finally they said, now you're going to physical therapy. And they took me down, and the first day I'm on a thing where I forget what you call them, but, and the other one leg had a cast on it, they amputated it. And so I was really just hopping with the good leg. And so they had me do it like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And I said, well, can I not do some more? You know, I was ready. And that day is when I started my project. And my goal was to go to the Himalayas, which we did, but we couldn't go the next year because of the cancer. And we spent that summer up in Vermont. We had a house in Vermont, and some of the the mountains are only 3,000 feet or something, you know, and Scott would go up and did I drive the car? Oh yes, by that time I was driving. I had a stick shift car at that time, but now but I would drive around the other side of the mountain, and he would go and come down the other side, and I would meet him because I was just too weak from the radiation and whatever. So the next year we went to India. And so that was my goal. But after that, my goal was just to go on our next trip. And so one year we just sold our house and we went to Europe for 6 months, and we just lived in mountains and backpacked every day.
So you're task oriented and goal oriented.
I guess so.
Moving from one task to the next, as opposed to.
I don't view it as a task as much as a project. I mean, a task sounds like it's work. But that when I reflect back on it, at the time, I didn't think anything about it. But people when I got back to Long Island and I had the leg amputation, and all my friends and so on came, and visitors, which I didn't have in California, and they'd say, well, I was a therapist and quite a lot of therapy type people came, and they'd say, why are you not angry? I said, well, why should I be angry? And they said, well, you should be angry. And I really got more annoyed with these people. It just really bothered me that they said it. And I said, look, it was all an act of nature. If somebody had pushed me, I might be angry with them. And I didn't even do anything stupid. People said, oh, you just take risks. This was such a modest hike. And I said, but if you're out in nature, I tell you, when it's 3:30 and I'm high in the mountains, I look out for the thunderstorms. I know enough about the weather, but some things you can't predict. And so I just viewed it as an act of nature.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so, but I do think, I realized that I really found a great prosthetist on Long Island, very active and very, he was very oriented to helping people who had physical, like a golfers or
Yeah.
pilots and swimmers, and his goal was to help you be what you want to be. You know what I mean?
Get back to the things I love to do.
Yes, that was kind of his phrase, in fact. So that was great, and that really helped me a huge amount. And I realized very early on, and I got quite good at I got better and better at bicycling. Although you pay a price bicycling on the back of your knee on your prosthesis. But I think very early on, I would be walking and people didn't know I was an amputee. So I took a certain sort of, oh, I like this. I can just walk and people don't. And to this day, it still happens. And it just happened yesterday in a restaurant. And I said, I'll take all the luggage, the storekeeper. I said, I just picked the stuff up because my arms are quite strong, really because of the weightlifting. I don't lift as much now as I did at the gym, but it's still, if you do it, a lot and regular. So I think that's what keeps me going. So my advice to people would be, people who don't like to exercise, I don't know what it must be like. But I do tell people when we have conversations that I really believe, I never was a marathon runner and I didn't ever want to be, but I would read about marathon runners and how when they stopped running, they got sort of depressed. And that, of course, I read every book's about, and I realized, and I would say to anybody who asked me about it, like I would say to you, that exercising gets me on a high. And I never really thought about it until I was doing this disciplined, these kind of, not always in physical therapy, but of course I joined a gym and I'm in the gym now. And 3 years ago, I started to learn to swim and I've got quite good at it. And I sacrificed my swimming this afternoon to get on to talk to you.
Bless you.
I'll do it tomorrow. I only do that twice a week. But I would share that with other younger people who say, oh, how could you do all that? I just, I go to the gym and it's such a hassle. Well, that's your attitude. The gym's not going to be good. And I said, well, look, there's some gyms that they call meat racks where younger people go and pick each other up.
Yeah.
That never bothered me. But I said, if you go and you do it to, it's really about not just your survival, but it's about sort of self-respect, I think. Kind of like being what you want to be and to be able to help people and to be able to help yourself first, you know what I mean? So I guess that's the kind of advice that I give people, but I really do think that I began to understand these things. I would read about marathon runners, and now if I don't exercise, I feel it. And I've been in the hospital so many times over the last 30 years, but mostly to do with kidneys and bladder and cancer, big issues. And so my most fragile part of my whole being is my abdominal area because of all these surgeries. And everything I exercise, I have to gauge that it's just right. And so I think that's the only advice I give people.
Well, I think that's pretty good advice. We're very pleased to have you as a customer.
Yes, well, I'll look up your rig and see what else, or tell me anything else that you think I might like to look at.
Well, I think we have a little, we're going to send you a gift for doing this. We have a fun little stretching wand that would help you, push that shoulder up. The therapists call it distraction when they open the joint a little bit, and it helps with circulation. And Camille, who's still on the line here with us, I'm going to ask her to mail one to you as a thank you.
Okay. Oh, well, that's very nice.
Yeah.
And you can use, see, it's good to have things you can use even if you have to stay in bed.
Exactly.
And right now I have to elevate my leg every 2 hours, which that's a hassle, but I do it because it really helps me sleep better during the night.
And you use our stretch strap for that.
Pardon?
You use the stretch strap to elevate your leg.
No. When I'm in bed and even during the night, I just put extra big.
Oh, you use pillows.
They want to have it there where it's elevated above my heart.
Oh,
That's to do with the vein problems, the circulation.
Not a
And
stretch.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what
thank you so much. I'm glad you volunteered to
Oh, no.
visit with us and sacrificed your swim today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.